Welcome to Beekeeping for Beginners. My name is Melinda Jean Stafford, and today I'll be discussing the essential steps for beginning beekeepers during the months of January and February. The checklist this time of year is relatively short, but does require some research and a small investment. It's important as a new beekeeper to know what you're buying, what it's to be used for, and to feel good about it. So our main goals for these months are, first off, purchasing bees. It may seem odd to be purchasing bees and equipment this early in the year, but suppliers only have so many bees that they can sell. You want to get on these lists early. Next, we want to purchase or prepare our equipment, such as hives and beekeeping tools. So what are the essential pieces of equipment that you need to get started? And finally, doing some research so that you can feel prepared for the months to come. Let's first talk about the bees. There are essentially two options for purchasing bees when you're starting from scratch. You can either purchase a package of bees, or you can purchase what's called a nuke, which is short for Nucleus Hive. Let's discuss the first option, a package of bees. A package of bees is just that. It's literally a package or a box filled with bees. It's made of a small wooden box with netting or wire on the sides to allow for airflow. There's about 3 pounds of bees inside. There is also a queen inside, but she's in a little cage that keeps her separate from the rest of the bees. You can see that cage in the photo shown here. The cage, just like the box, has netting on the sides to allow for airflow. Installing these bees into a hive is easy, but it can be intimidating. You get a hive box ready with frames inside, much like the picture shown here. Next, you take the queen in her little cage and place a piece of candy, gummy, or marshmallow in the hole that keeps her inside that cage. You carefully wedge the queen's cage between two frames somewhere in the middle of the hive. Next, take your package of bees and spray them with sugar water using a spray bottle. This disables their ability to fly as easily. Next, tip your box over and dump all of the bees into your hive. An advantage to this option is that it's a little bit cheaper than a nuke. They range in price from $80 to $100. A disadvantage to this option is that the package takes longer to settle into the hive. Dumping bees into a hive that has frames that don't have prepared wax drawn out on them is not as welcoming of a home as a hive with wax present. It can take the bees longer to build up the wax in their hive than the nuke option. Further, the installation process for the package is a bit more complicated. Now let's talk about the second option, a nucleus hive, or more popularly known as a nuke. A nuke is a smaller or miniature hive. While most hive boxes have 8 to 10 frames, a nuke generally consists of 4 frames with drawn out wax, eggs, and more developed baby bees known as brood. They also come with a feeder frame to keep the bees well fed, productive, and happy during transport. Just like packages, they also come with a queen, but in this case, the queen is already introduced to the hive and is more settled in, laying eggs and off to a good start. However, this is an ideal situation. Not all nukes come picture perfect like this. An advantage to the nuke is that installing it into your hive at home is very easy. As the picture shows, you simply remove 4 to 5 frames from the middle of your hive box at home and move in the 4 to 5 frames from the nuke that you ordered in the original order that they came in. Presto, you're done. A disadvantage to the nuke is that it costs a little bit more than a package. They range in price from $120 to $150. However, another advantage is that the queen and the bees are already off to a great start with frames that have built up wax, eggs, and brood present, and the queen is introduced and performing. Let's review the two options and compare apples to apples. Here's how I look at it. If your overall goal is to spend the least amount of money starting up, a package may be your best option. However, they're generally more difficult to install and they take longer to get going. So as a new beekeeper with little experience, you might find that a nuke is worth the extra few dollars to increase your chances at success. I have seen both options succeed as well as fail. There just isn't a guarantee success from either option. I would also encourage talking to folks near you that keep bees. What works for them? What have they found successful? There are several different ways to order bees. What's most important to know here is order them immediately. Retailers often get long lists of customers wanting to purchase bees, and waiting until they arrive is simply too late. You can order packages and nukes through multiple local resources. For example, your local D&B stores are a convenient and close option. For specific information, call or check out one of the stores. Local clubs like the Treasure Valley Beekeepers Club have connections to many reputable beekeepers in the Northwest that sell both options. For more information, check out idabees.org. Local commercial beekeepers often sell them as well. Do a little bit of research online to find one near you. Orders are often taken during the months of January and February. After that, most lists are full. Each retailer has slightly different prices, ordering processes, and pickup processes. In general, most will require that you pay in full when you sign up. From there, they often give you a general range for when the bees will be ready to pick up. Since many do require that you pick them up, going with a local option can be a lot easier. Pickup dates range depending on the weather that given year. Sometimes they're the beginning to middle of April, and some years it's closer to May, so you have to be flexible with pickup. For D&B packages and nukes, the estimated pickup dates will be between April 15th and May 1st. After purchasing bees, the next important task is to buy beekeeping equipment. You may have already done some research online, visited a local retailer, or read some materials on what beekeeping supplies are available for purchase. In this process, you may have found that there's a ton of products out there. There are products, treatments, tools, and supplies for each little step of beekeeping. I was very overwhelmed as a new beekeeper because of the selection and the sheer amount of options. Here's what's most important to know. There's a ton of products out there, but many are products you just don't need as a beginner, or they're products that you can make at home. My goal today is to discuss the basic products that you need to get started, the fundamentals: hive components, protective clothing, and basic tools. There are multiple options for hives. Some use what are called top bar hives, others use Waré hives. Today, I'll be discussing the more widely known Langstroth hive, which is pictured here. This image and list shows you the basic equipment that you'll need to get started with a Langstroth hive. Before I go into detail on the individual components, I want to clarify the differences and the names of the two sizes of boxes that you can see in this photo. The larger hive box, shown here as the bottom two boxes, is a 9 5/8 inch box, more popularly known as a deep box or a brood box. The smaller hive box, shown here as the top box, is 6 5/8 inches in measurement and is more popularly known as a medium or a honey super. So let's get started. I'll start from the bottom piece and I'll work my way upward. The bottom board serves as the resting base and the foundation for your hive. There are two options: the vented bottom board on the left and the solid bottom board pictured on the right. The vented bottom board has wire screening to allow for airflow through the bottom of the hive, whereas the solid doesn't have that. I know beekeepers that use both options or will even interchange them throughout the year. I have found that the solid bottom board does everything that I need. It provides a solid foundation and doesn't allow for a large cold draft of air in the winter. I use this option year-round and have found it successful, but know that there are opinions on both. Moving on upward to the hive boxes. The most popular and commonly seen setup is to use the larger deep boxes on the bottom of the hive for the queen to use as her area for brood, which is a term that refers to baby bees. In other words, it's a location where she'll lay eggs and raise new bees. When you start out with new bees from a package or nuke, you'll start off with just one deep box, like the picture shown here. Once they nearly fill that box, you can add another. You'll notice in this picture that there is a black frame on the far right. This is our feeder frame. A feeder frame, pictured here, is a hollowed out plastic container that's about the same size as a frame. It's designed to hold sugar syrup, which, when the bees eat, enables them to build out the wax in their frames faster. This is a crucial component to any new hive. For more detailed information on the feeding process, check out this link that I have found very helpful. Once your bees nearly fill the first box, about 7 out of the 10 frames, you can add another. Once the population of your bees nearly fills the second deep box, it's time to add a honey super. Again, another name for a honey super is this 6 5/8 inch box, also called a medium. The reason a lot of beekeepers use these shorter boxes for their honey storage is because they're easier to move around than the larger deep boxes that can get really heavy. However, some beekeepers find that it's easier to use boxes that are all mediums or all deeps to make interchanging the frames a lot easier. You might be wondering, well, how do the bees know just to store honey in the top medium or honey super box? If you looked closely in the previous photos, you might have seen a flat metal piece between the deep box and the honey super. This is called a queen excluder, shown here. The name gives it away, but the metal screen keeps the queen in the bottom deeps of the hive and prevents her from getting up into the honey super and laying eggs. She's larger than the rest of the bees, so she can't squeeze through these metal wires. This tool is very helpful for this reason. Using a queen excluder nearly ensures that your brood, your baby bees, will stay in the deep boxes below the queen excluder, and anything above it will be honey. This makes harvesting a lot easier because you know you're not going to be harvesting any brood in your honey. Some beekeepers prefer to not use this because they feel it discourages the worker bees from moving upward into the honey supers. However, I find this tool very useful, and it still results in a lot of honey to harvest. I use it on all of my hives that have honey supers. From the past pictures, you will notice that each of the boxes had 10 frames in it. I find this to be the most popular hive size. However, some beekeepers use hive with just 8 frames instead of 10. They find this advantageous because of the lighter weight. Hive boxes can be really heavy when they're full. If you're concerned about moving heavy boxes, I would suggest trying the 8-frame option. You can see in this photo the size between the two different frames. The large frame goes into the deep boxes and the smaller one goes into the honey super or medium boxes. The foundation on these frames has a hexagonal print with a thin layer of wax covering it. This allows for the bees to build off of that pattern and more quickly fill their frames with wax. The darker black foundation used in the deep frames makes it much easier for us as beekeepers to see the little white eggs and larvae that the queen lays because of the contrast in color. The lighter yellow foundation used in the medium frames makes it easier for beekeepers to see the honey and its true color. Next up is the inner cover. It's put on the top of the highest hive box or honey super. This simple piece of wood is helpful in a lot of ways. It rests between the top hive box and your top cover. Without an inner cover, it's pretty common for the top cover to get stuck to your hive box because the bees try to fill in every nook and cranny with beeswax and a sticky substance called propolis. Using an inner cover helps to prevent the top cover from getting stuck. And because it's flat, like you can see in the picture, it's pretty easy to take your Hive Tool, which we'll talk about in a moment, and pry that inner cover off to access your top hive box. The hole in the top of this inner cover increases the ventilation in your hive to keep the hive cooler in the summer and not too warm in the winter. Now to our final hive piece, the top cover. This particular top cover is called a telescoping cover because it has a sheet of shiny metal on top. This piece of metal helps to protect the hive from the elements, rain, wind, hail, you name it. You'll notice that the outer circumference of this piece is larger than the inner cover or hive bodies, so it allows this top cover to rest on top, leaving an overhanging edge on all 4 sides. Now you have all your pieces together. In this photo, I've set up the pieces into a staircase format so that you can see each individual piece. Just to review, this hive setup includes 1 top cover, 1 inner cover, 10 medium frames inside of 1 honey super, 1 queen excluder, 1 feeder frame, 20 deep frames inside of 2 deep boxes, and 1 bottom board. Remember, you may decide to do things a little differently. For example, you might find it easier to use hive boxes that are all the same size, either all deeps or all mediums, so that you can interchange equipment. Or you might find that the 8-frame option works better for you. Any of these options can work. This particular hive setup has been put onto cinder blocks. Keeping your hive off the ground is really helpful for a couple of reasons. It prevents rain, mud, and weeds from rotting or covering the entrance of your hive. It can also help to prevent small animals like mice or skunks from getting in or messing around with your hive. Cinder blocks serve as a good, easy, and cheap way to get them off the ground. Some people use old 2x4s or a short table or any other piece of old equipment. It doesn't really matter what you use as long as it's stable. Protective clothing of some sort is crucial to any new beekeeper. One of the largest concerns that I had as a new beekeeper was getting stung, and protective clothing can help to eliminate some of those stings. Most importantly, it helps you to build confidence when working with your bees. There are multiple options for protective clothing. The first option is the beekeeping suit shown here. It covers nearly your entire body in one continuous piece. Some even come with a built-in headpiece with a veil, like the beekeeper shown here on the right. There are some definite advantages to the all-encompassing suit. First off, they're really easy. You can slip them over whatever you're wearing and just go. However, in the hot summer months or during honey harvest time, they can get pretty toasty because they hold in all the heat. Many retailers sell these suits and often sell an option that's just the top portion, which you could wear with jeans. Another alternative to the one-piece beekeeping suit is simply digging through your own clothing and finding pieces that work. This is what I do for a couple of reasons. First, using my own clothing is cheaper than buying an entire suit. Also, I find that I can move more easily in my own clothing. And finally, I find that I stay a lot cooler when I wear multiple pieces than one continuous suit. The picture here shows me in my usual beekeeping getup. I wear a thicker pair of jeans that don't fit too tightly. I've learned the hard way that bee stings can go right through thin or tightly fitting clothes. Next, I wear a loose-fitting white zip-up. White's the most popular color and for good reason. It's certainly cooler than dark clothes, but white is also off the radar to the eyes of bees. They aren't as attracted to this color in the way that they are bright colors like those of flowers. To cover my head and face, I purchased a beekeeping hat with a veil. This hat has vents in it to keep my head cooler. I have found that the square veils, like the one that I'm wearing, are nice because they fold up neatly for storing. This keeps my veil in good shape for a long time. I like to make sure that my feet are covered with tennis shoes, and I go as far as to tuck my pants into my socks to prevent any bees from finding their way up my leg. That tickling would certainly cause some panic. However, a rubber band around the bottom of your pant leg works well too. Gloves are another great way to build confidence when beekeeping. The gloves pictured here are long and can stretch over the cuff of your suit or clothing to prevent bees from crawling up your arm. The one on the left has some vents near the wrist that allow for airflow to keep you cool. I want to point out something very important here. Gloves are a great way to build confidence as a new beekeeper, but they're also a great way to accidentally pinch, squish, and kill bees because you can't feel them on your hands. Pinching or squishing a bee releases pheromones that warns the other bees of an intruder. Too much of this, and you might find that your bees aren't so fond of you. I encourage all new beekeepers to start with gloves to build some confidence, but then wean yourself off of them so that you can more carefully work with your bees. Let's talk about tools. There are so many cool and fun tools out there to purchase, but I want to warn you, you just don't need all of them, especially as a new beekeeper. Save your money by purchasing just what you need at first. The other cool tools can come later when you decide that you need them. So I'll first address the tools that I consider fundamental, a smoker and a hive tool, and then I'll mention one that I find helpful but not totally necessary, a frame rest. A smoker is a must-have tool. Smoke disables the bees from effectively communicating that an intruder is present. It disperses pheromones, one of their many ways of communicating. Not using smoke when needed can make your life as a beekeeper a lot less pleasant. Most smokers look just like the one in this photo, a metal canister with a barrier around it to prevent you from touching the hottest part of the tool. It has an accordion-like piece on the right that blows air into the smoker to allow for the smoke to move upward and out the open point in the top. You can load the inside of your smoker with just about anything that will burn cleanly. Newspaper, cotton, small kindling, wood chips, burlap, dry grass, bark, a math test that you failed, just about anything. The goal with the fuel is that you want to put enough in there that you get a good fire going so that you have smoke that will last for your whole beekeeping session. You don't want your flame to burn out when you need it most. Further, you want to make sure that you have a nice, cool, thick, white smoke coming out of your smoker, not a dark, hot smoke, and certainly not flames. The next crucial tool is a Hive Tool. This little thing will soon become your best friend, there with you, by your side at all times, never to fail or leave you. Your Hive Tool should be in your hand or in your back pocket at all times. They also look pretty fashionable against pink fingernail polish. This tool is useful for so many things I can barely list all of them, but common uses are using it as a lever to pry your inner cover off your hive, pry your hive boxes apart, or separate frames so that you can lift them out of your hive for an inspection. You can use it to scrape wax and propolis off your frames or your covers. Use it to push newspaper or other items down into the flame of your smoker. The list could seriously go on and on for days. A frame rest is a cool tool that assists you in a hive inspection. I find this tool helpful, but it's certainly not something that I consider a must-have. The frame rest sits on the edge of your hive box and can hold frames that you pull out of your hive during an inspection. I find this tool helpful because it helps me keep the frames in the same order as they were in the hive, but it also reduces the chances that I'll set the frame on the ground and knock it over. Finally, after purchasing bees and buying equipment, it's very important to do some research. You want to be prepared for the months to come. You should know what you're buying and what it's supposed to accomplish. You should be comfortable with your beekeeping decisions and know why you're making them, not just because some lady on an online class told you to. So I encourage you to get out there and dig a little deeper. I've listed here some of my favorite resources. As a new beekeeper, these are the places that I go first when I have a question or concern. But certainly, don't limit your research to just these options. I encourage you to read some books. I highly recommend this one called First Lessons in Beekeeping by Keith Delaplane. It's a short read and it has lots of great pictures. Look online, but with some scrutiny. Unfortunately, just because something made its way to the internet doesn't mean it's true. However, I find that scientificbeekeeping.com is a great website with information on just about anything beekeeping. Further, the information on the site is backed up with research, data collection, and years of experience. And finally, connect with local beekeepers. I can't emphasize this one enough. Connecting with local beekeepers is the best way to learn what works here in our area versus what works in Florida, according to some article's author. I found that the Treasure Valley Beekeepers Club is an excellent resource. They offer mentors, online information, and monthly meetings to address current topics. One of my favorite features on their website is right on the home page, the What Should I Be Doing Now section, which they update nearly every month with new tips and tricks for the current season. Let's review our task list for January and February. First off, purchasing some bees. Remember that there are essentially two options, a package or a nuke, and don't forget to order them now. Second, purchasing or preparing equipment. That includes hive components, protective clothing, and some basic tools. And finally, do some basic research so that you can feel prepared in the coming months. Again, it's important as a new beekeeper to know what you're buying, what it's used for, and to feel good about it. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you feel more confident, prepared, and inspired. This has been Beekeeping for Beginners, a focus on January and February tasks with your local worker bee, Melinda Jean Stafford. Keep your bees buzzing, y'all.